Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to this live broadcast of the European Training Foundation. Today, this conversation is being broadcast on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. And today we're going to speak about skills dimension of migration. Governments and institutions across the globe are trying to find solutions how to better manage labor migration for the societies and for the economies. And this month, the month of December, European Training Foundation is having a communication campaign on the topic of the skills dimension of migration. Today, we're going to touch upon many questions. Please be active, contribute in the chat. We will be gladly take your questions on board. And some of them are, for instance, what is the EU doing to support migrant skills and employability? But before starting, let me introduce you our guest for this conversation. Xavier Mateo de Cortada, the Director ad interim of the European Training Foundation. Hello, Xavier. Thanks for joining today.
Hello, good afternoon.
And let me introduce our second guest, who is Anita Vela, Head of Unit of Legal Pathways and Integration, Directorate General for Migration and Home Affairs of the European Commission. Hi, Anita.
Hi, good afternoon to you and everyone.
Thanks for joining us. And for all our followers watching us live, please let us know where are you watching us from, because we really would like to understand the geography of this live broadcast. So let's get started. Anita, what the European Commission and specifically your unit is doing to support the skills dimension of migration? Anita.
Thanks. Indeed. So to explain a little bit, my unit, so we are a team in Brussels here in DG Home, so the Director General for Home Affairs and Migration, and we are responsible for legal pathways to the EU, so improving the path actually to come to the EU in a legal way, but also the integration and successful, let's say, inclusion of migrants and refugees that are already here. Now, how do we do this? So the starting point, if you like, of our work here within the Commission is really to understand where are the needs for more legal migration to the EU, what are the challenges at stake, and from there rolling out a number of actions at EU level to really help member states to facilitate the, let's say, arrival of legal migrants to their economies and their societies, and let's say making legal migration successful in practice on the ground. And of course, to make these legal pathways to Europe successful, in particular, if we think of finding a job in the EU, right? We have to look, of course, at the skills needed by the EU labor market. What are the employers looking at, looking for, but also then, you know, what are the skills that the third country national could and has to offer? And how can we then, you know, match this from both sides? And how can we make sure that this process then functions seamlessly and efficiently, if you like, for both the employer that is looking to fill in his position with maybe talent from outside of Europe, and also, of course, for the person wishing to migrate and take forward more opportunities within the EU. So looking at it from a European perspective, you know, how can we facilitate what member states are doing on the ground in terms of improving the legal pathways to Europe. So, and there's an important skills dimension, as I said, to this.
Thanks a lot, Anita. We will definitely come back to more in detail towards what your unit and what Directorate General is doing to make sure that there is this successful legal migration from outside EU to the EU country. But first of all, Xavier, we are speaking here about skills for labor migrants. Are they important at all? Skills and qualifications, how they are, what role do they play for the labor migration? Xavier.
Well, thank you for this question. I think basically people migrate to find a job or a better job. And in this is a very important phenomenon worldwide. Some studies calculate that into almost 5% of the labor force of recipient countries are migrants. So I think this is it's a very important amount. And normally this happens because there is two mismatch phenomenon. One is that there is in the sending countries of these migrants, there is people who have cannot find a job corresponding to the level of qualifications and skills, and in the host country there is jobs which are not covered with the existing people with those skills and competences. So this produces, let's say, tendency of people trying to find a job in the other place where it can be found. Very often we see people who they say, I don't find a job for my level of qualifications, and with the same level of qualifications they go to another country and they find a job. So this is basically the qualifications and skills are the passport to people moving from one side to another. Then it is important is that the qualifications normally describe the learning outcomes for what the person knows how to do things related with an employment. But very often these skills and competencies that one person has been acquired through other means which are not reflected necessarily in a qualification certificate or diploma. And therefore, this is what makes sometimes difficult for migrants to find the job that they are looking for. And also very often it happens that what in a diploma in one country means does not necessarily mean what in another place. So this is what creates these sometimes difficulties on matching skills and jobs. In any case, what is clear is that the more you invest in quality training and education in the places where those people come from, the better conditions you will find in the country itself, or if they decide to migrate in the place of where they migrate.
Thanks a lot, Xavier. So if we would be able to create a system where skills and qualifications would talk to each other from different countries, it would help not only actually to the labor migration from outside the European Union, but also to the European Union citizen. Is that right, Xavier? Having a common language in qualifications and skills would help. Is that right, Xavier?
Of course, absolutely. I think it's common language, but also it's the mechanism to put it together. I mean, today I think there is technologies to match these profiles of the people and the profiles of the jobs. I think it's a question of putting this into practice. But of course, today you see now with the social networks how refined the information about the profiling of people can be. And I think this is a way of translating that into the normal practice in the labor market. Of course, this is the key.
Thanks a lot, Xavier. It was just to make sure that I understood well your point. So before we go into the next question, I would like to take the highs and hellos that you, dear followers, are sending us. So we have Abdikert watching us from Turkey. We have Ahmed from Ethiopia and Wiseman Jack from South Africa. Thanks a lot for joining us today. And please keep on sending all your comments, your suggestions, your questions to our speakers. Now, Anita, you've mentioned that your Directorate General, your unit is working on the difficult task of matching the skills needs in the European Union with what is available there outside the European Union. But is there a way to make labor migration a win-win for the countries of origin, for the countries of destination, and of course for the migrants themselves?
Yes, a very important aspect and question here, because indeed we have, come up with a broad, policy and sustainable agenda at EU level, skills and talent package, which I believe we will also be sharing the link so that followers can look at in more detail as to what we have proposed. And amongst a number of things, including improving the legal framework at the EU level, we have also proposed some specific, more operational initiatives that are really aimed at making this labor migration a triple win. Yes. And when I say triple win, this really has to be for the different parties involved. And it will be key, for our policy actions as we develop them. Yeah. But I have to say, and I'm also very happy to discuss it further, it is a complex process. And as you can imagine, we need to build it step by step, also in discussion with the right partners. And, we have to have the kind of conducive, ecosystem where everyone is engaged politically to make sure, that we have if you like, talent partnerships, that I can speak about later on, that are really aimed at being tailored, to who we are doing, which third country, if you like, the EU is doing this partnership with, what are the different sides and the different needs from the different sides, and how can we make sure that this partnership is not just about maybe addressing labor shortages within the EU, but rather, a partnership of common interest. So indeed, maybe there are certain skills needs within the EU, but if we are to have a partnership with a third country, let's also look at maybe what is the need for investment in training, and maybe the more vocational and higher education training in the third country itself. Looking, for instance, within this partnership at what is the framework for the provision of qualifications, be it professional, academic, and how does this compare, if you like, to the same qualifications and professional skills framework at the European level. So really, we want to zoom in with these talent partnerships with a specific partner country to really build, a framework that is win-win from different sides, not just, if you like, from the interested member states, but of course, from the partner country that wants to be in the partnership. And one concrete element, of these talent partnerships should be, in our view, and that's where the discussions are going, circular types of mobilities. So you have persons, engaged in maybe doing an apprenticeship within the EU, and then possibly after a few years, going back to the third country and taking their experience with them and, reinvesting it maybe into the society and their country of origin. And like this, there is really this triple win from all sides. Yeah, so it's a bit of an innovative process. It's very much sensitive to the issue of brain drain. I think this is really important. And we are starting with a few countries, specifically because it's complex and we want to really build a good model of how we can do labor migration with a triple win angle, if you like.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Anita. We will definitely come back to those talent partnerships. And I also invite our followers to make your questions, because you have the moment, you have the right people in front of you. So please use that as an opportunity. Now, before going to my next question, I just would like to welcome a couple of new followers that just joined us. Donika from Albania, Murad from Tunisia, and Aspasia from Skopje, North Macedonia. Welcome, colleagues, and thanks for joining us. Please write your questions in the chat. Xavier, the European Training Foundation works with the countries surrounding European Union. So what exactly ETF is doing to help EU neighborhood to manage the labor migration and its impact? So what is ETF relations in this regard, and what is ETF work with both European Commission and the EU neighboring countries? Xavier, over to you.
Well, I think in the neighborhood of the European Union, the phenomenon of labor migration has been becoming more complex than it was years ago. So in the past, we had countries which basically were exporting people to other markets. And now, today, what we find is that most of the countries at the same time, they have phenomenons of emigration and at the same time immigration. And together with that, they can have also problems of mismatch and difficulties of finding people to do some jobs. So the three phenomenons happen at the same time. So it's important to understand which is the inflows and outflows of the labor force, and which is the profile of this, who is really migrating, with which type of skills are the people who are migrating and who are the people who are coming in. So I think this is a phenomenon that was known for years. For example, years ago already, we knew in Jordan that while there were a lot of people with high education who were tendency to migrate to the Gulf states or to the European Union or the United States, at the same time, Jordan was importing a lot of middle and low skilled people to work in the construction, for example, coming from other countries. And at the same time, there was a number of people with high education who, after a short period before marrying, they were not continuing working after marriage. So these phenomena, it's important to know exactly to better apply policies in this respect. So what we do as ETF, on one side, we work on creating evidence or finding evidence and do analysis on this is what is the skills dimension of migration. Very often you have statistics which do not tell you very much what is behind the numbers of people who are migrating. So you need to know exactly who is, what are the expectations, which is the migration project these people have. On the other side, we need to we try to support that the human capital policies that are in the countries capture this phenomenon of migration, because it is important that you don't have specific things just for migration, but this is part of the whole policies that you undertake, because at the end, migration is kind of a phenomenon within the labor market. And then the other thing, Anita was talking about ecosystem, skills ecosystems. So it's important to see which is the governance of this migration. Who are the actors who intervene and which role they can play? And for example, very often employers, for example, or other civil society organizations, which could be supporting those processes and making life easier to people, are not really involved in the policy making or in the policy implementation. And then at the end, I think it's important also this policy dialogue with the countries, between the countries, in order to better define the policies that can create a win-win-win solutions. If you ask me exactly what we do for the European Commission delegations, we work, apart from providing this information coming from these studies and so on, we try to help on one side mechanisms and projects which facilitate this dialogue and this cooperation between the different actors. And in particular, I think there has already been mentioned these talent partnerships in Morocco, Egypt, and Tunisia. I think it's important we can bring this evidence and this information into the design of these mechanisms. And on the other side, I think we can also bring tools and mechanisms that in European Union, the member states or the European Union institutions use for better managing qualifications and make them also available or in use in the partner countries. I'm talking about, of course, the qualification framework, the European qualification frameworks, Europass, EURES, and databases on qualifications and so on. These are tools which help really to make this process, which is very complex, as Anita said, in a more rational and feasible way.
Thanks a lot, Xavier. So not only policy advice, which is extremely important, but also providing him with some tools, very concrete and hands-on tools that would help institutions in the EU neighboring countries to tackle the issue. Now, just to invite our followers again to let us know where you're watching us from and send us your questions. You have a unique opportunity to ask our director of the European Training Foundation, and Anita from the European Commission, who directly work on the issues of skills dimension of migration. But something is about to change. In September this year, the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, announced that the 2023 is going to be the European Year of Skills. Anita, how it will impact your work? Because we're speaking about skills dimension of migration. So I guess it will be somehow integrated in your work, and what impact it will have on what your unit and the European Commission overall does. Anita.
Yes, indeed. There's a proposal from the side of the Commission. We're going to have this European Year of Skills. I think this is still under discussion with the co-legislators, but this is important, I have to say, and we need to see it in its various dimensions. So, of course, the idea of the European Year is to also, get to the grassroots of who concretely on the ground, within the EU is working on skills, who needs upskilling, what has been done already, and really engaging, really the actors and stakeholders on the ground. So there's a huge dimension, of course, on skilling and upskilling, the people that are, of course, working or inactive in the EU, looking for a job. They could also be migrants, or having a refugee background. So this is, of course, very still important for my work on integration and inclusion. So this is one big element of the European Year of Skills. But there is, another important element to that, which, of course, ties into labor migration. And this is about, again, attracting the right skills and talent to the EU. So it is a European Year of Skills, in all its including my angle, if you like, of work. And this is rightly so, because I think it's a policy mix. We need to, find the right skills that Europe needs. And there is very much a focus on, in particular, the digital transition, but also the green transition, and as well health. I believe there are quite some challenges and projections, of vacancies and job needs, aging population. It's important that we look at labor migration as well as an opportunity, if you like, for filling these shortages from the EU's side. So this is a little bit, the broad framework. But more specifically, maybe zooming in, as also announced by President von der Leyen, we will also be looking at the issue of recognition of skills and qualifications. This is a challenge. We have to understand, how in the process of having a legal pathway, having, the actual labor migration to the member states, how is this working? What is the challenge? What type of skills and qualifications do we need to have validated, recognized? There's a lot of work out there, I think, being done, including by, I think, the ETF and also CEDEFOP and the European Labour Authority. We're going to look at, how can we improve maybe and facilitate the recognition of skills and qualifications from third countries. And of course, this is a competence of member states as well, so it's complicated. But I think we need to start that conversation and see a little bit, if this is the missing piece of the puzzle, maybe to make labor migration more effective. And I say it is one piece of the puzzle because, on the other hand, we also have the whole migration and visa procedure. We are negotiating in Council a recast of our single permit directive at EU level. It is important, that discussion, let's say, on the legislation and the process of migration at member state level goes hand in hand, because, of course, we want to facilitate recognition, but we want to make the process of coming legally for a job also easier. So this is a bit to sum up how we fit into the European Year of Skills. And definitely it will be an important year. And I hope that whilst we roll out, our talent partnerships, we also manage to give an important skills development dimension to those as well over the coming year.
Thanks a lot, Anita. I think next year is going to be big for everyone, and having President von der Leyen saying that there is a proposal to make it European Year of Skills is already a big step in raising the awareness of importance of skills, and of course of, as President said, attracting the right skills to our continent and making it work actually. Now, I'm seeing there is one question, and actually it's pretty much in line with what I was about to ask my next speaker, Xavier. In the world of skills, we often use the term skills intelligence, which is an info on key trends and demands of skills that could be used both for education and labor market purposes. Now, Xavier, what ETF is doing to build this skills intelligence? Do you have some examples to share with us?
Yes, absolutely. I think this is an essential part of the approach to manage this phenomenon of migration, is to better understand what skills are we talking about now. So in the different sides, demand, supply, and so on. What we've been doing in the last years, on one side, we've been trying to develop some country fishes, which we can try to put them their information we have about the labor market, which are the skills trends in the labor market in certain countries. What is the policy framework that those countries have developed concerning migration, and also good practices. So things that are working well, sometimes in projects and policies that are implemented by the country itself, sometimes in cooperation with the international organization or with member states. And of course, the European Commission has a lot of projects in this respect. So building on this information, you can then inform better the different decisions to be made in terms of policies, in terms of projects. We've been doing that in Georgia, in Moldova, in Ukraine, in what refers to the East neighborhood, and then Jordan, Lebanon, Morocco, Tunisia in the south. So these migrations fishes is something that we can use for all these different purposes. Then we have two recent studies that we've been doing. One is on this triangular relationship between education and training, labor market, and migration. And here, I think one of the alarms that some people raised this announcement of the European Year of Skills, and the fact that there was some people interpreted that this was just an attempt of bringing the best talent in the world to Europe and leaving the countries without skills and human capital, and therefore having an effect of brain drain. I think this is a quite mechanism interpretation of the phenomenon. I think it's a little bit more complex. When there is phenomena of migration, there is, of course, brain drain. So people who have been countries have been investing in the skills and competences of some people and having a certain human capital, then goes to other countries where they experience a brain gain. So they actually gain that. But then there's also phenomena of return, for example. No? So people who have been working in another country, who have some experience, they have developed skills and competence, and eventually they return to the countries. There's also phenomena of remittances, which in some countries is extremely important, the amount of money that people save when they are working in another country and they bring back to their families of origin. And then this is income that is coming into the country, which probably would not have taken place if the person had been working in the local labor market. And then, of course, there's the opposite. People who have been developed some skills, if these skills are not used in the country because there is no job enough, this is also a brain waste, which is also even worse than the brain drain. No? So this, I think we've been studying that. in the different countries of the Western Balkans, and we see that the phenomenon articulates differently in the different countries. There are countries which have, at the same time, are receiving migrants from other countries, but they are having high-level skills who are living to the European Union, for example, and then other countries which this relation does not work exactly like that. So this is something that it's important to know. Another study that we are now undertaking is more of a qualitative approach, trying to see the pathways that several migrants are following from some countries into, can be between countries in the south, but also going to the European Union. And the idea of that is to produce a policy brief at the end, which tries to present which are the main findings of this analysis. I think this is something that is important. When we do skills intelligence, we do analysis, we try to understand this. This is always to inform policies and inform projects and programs that are implemented in order to help those migrants to have a successful process, and that this is really reaching solutions that are win-win for everyone. I think this is important. And I think what we need to know is that at the same time that there is a lot of resistance to adopt more migrants into Europe, we know that the employers are saying that they have difficulties in filling all the jobs that they would probably could create if they had the people with the skills. So I think we need to really manage those processes in a more rational way.
Thanks a lot. Thanks, Xavier. And I think one very important message actually is that European Year of Skills is not going to be only about Europe. It's a global initiative, and we need to highlight it as much as we can. So it's not about attracting talent to Europe and leaving everyone else without it. Anita, you've mentioned several times the talent partnerships, the initiative that you are actually working on. So what are talent partnerships?
Good, and it's a good bridge to what you have just said, Maria, and to what Xavier has been explaining. Definitely, it is not about taking all the talent of the world to the EU. I mean, I think this is the starting point, and I want to anchor this again into the triple win idea, and the fact that definitely we need to look at brain gain and not brain drain from all sides. I think it's really, really important. But beyond the concepts, look, we have been, supporting a number of pilot projects on legal migration, with a number of third countries under our AMIF fund, but also under the Migration Partnership Facility that we implement via ICMPD. So some member states have been devising, if you like, specific projects of mobilities. I don't know, with Morocco, Lithuania, with Nigeria. There has been, some seeds of partnering between member states and the third country on specific themes and sectors with some mobilities of persons coming to the EU, be it a traineeship or not. We want to, these talent partnerships, we want to kind of uplift the results of these projects, because they have been small, if you like, they were pilots. We want to really steer from a European perspective a talent partnership that is not project-based, if you like, but really having, 2 or more member states wanting to engage politically with a third country to really have a framework with clear, political objectives of what type of cooperation and partnership on skills development and mobilities and talent we want to do with a specific partner country. We are looking at and doing some steps for having such talent partnerships launched with Morocco, Tunisia, and Egypt to start with. So it's very relevant here because I think they are important as well countries that ETF is working with. But we are also looking in a second phase of starting the process more in depth with Pakistan and Bangladesh. Key principles of success of these partnerships are that we have member states that are engaged in being in these partnerships. So we have been really investing in discussing, with our counterparts. We have some member states definitely wanting to start the process soon with Morocco, but also with Tunisia and eventually Egypt. We are at a process of defining, what are the economic sectors of interest on which, these partnership, if you like, with Morocco could be built. So again, looking at, the construction sector, maybe the transport sector, agriculture, hospitality. There are some, sectors of common interest from both sides. This is a process, that is ongoing. So again, important for me to emphasize that it is not from the angle of addressing labor shortages essentially, but rather, how can we partner together so that member states can also invest maybe in the skills and talent in Morocco, and vice versa. We can have some elements of mobility, but again also some elements of investment in skills development and training of maybe young people in Morocco, and all this of course in the perspective of the discussions that Morocco has as well on its own international strategy on mobility. Yeah, so it's really a two-way process. We will have to find, a partnership that works for both the EU member states and each of these three countries, if you like. We will be, setting up dedicated roundtables with each of them. So we are now in discussion on finding a specific date, understanding who should be at this roundtable. We need to make an effort to get, the private sector engaged. So also associations and representatives of chambers of commerce from both sides, because we have been hearing, from the experience of our pilot projects that I mentioned before. And it's clear, if employers are not in these partnerships, we cannot think, of scalable mobilities and nor sustainable investments in vocational training, if you like. So we want to make sure that we do the right steps, bring the right actors, and hopefully with these roundtables we can actually say that we have launched steps to define these talent partnerships with Morocco, Tunisia, and Egypt, hopefully over the coming year and months. And I think there was a question on whether we have evaluations.
Yes.
Very relevant topic. I'm all into evaluation, and we are actually looking at seeing the results and impacts of the pilot projects I mentioned before, because they will be useful, when we develop the talent partnerships themselves. But since, of course, we have not yet launched the first talent partnership, we are looking more at the results of the past experiences and see what we can learn from that. Yeah.
Anita, so the key word that I take from what you've just said is the dialogue. No, so in the basis of the talent partnership is the dialogue between EU member states under EU umbrella and the third country. So everything that will happen under this talent partnership will be agreed by both sides.
This is very important for us. Yes.
When do you plan to launch it? Because I understand that negotiations are ongoing and will be ongoing now in 2023. So I imagine that the first results of those partnerships will be seen actually in 2024. Is that right?
Yes, we plan, to organize these roundtable discussions, as I said, in Morocco to start with. Yes. We are in discussion now to have that beginning of next year. And hopefully, we can actually launch them and kick them off next year. And hopefully, we have a plan which, of course, first results in 2024, but hopefully also beyond, because it has to stay with us in time. And also, we need to see how maybe the EU funding, that is already out there can be plugged in to make these partnerships then real and concrete in terms of activities, including, vis-a-vis maximizing maybe the work that the ETF is doing on that and could be doing in the future.
I think what would be super interesting is actually to meet again in the same group of people and discuss the first results in a year, or actually more than a year time, and see how it goes. Actually, this is just an idea for the future. And my last question, again, to all of our followers, please send us your questions because we're about to finish this talk, but you still have time to send us your questions and comments. Xavier, when we speak about labor migration, we hear a lot the term portability of migrant skills and qualifications. So we imagine a little passport that people would bring with them and would be able to prove that they acquired certain skills or qualifications. What does this really mean, and how we can best support this kind of notion, this term, and this passport that each labor migrant can carry with them, and highlight the importance of it to a wider society? Xavier.
Yes, in an ideal world, probably what a qualification means in one country would be immediately understood in another country. Right? And that's why the European Commission has, the European Union has developed this European qualification framework, which it's a kind of a really a translation device. So what in one country means that in another country means that, or also in terms of levels. And basically what the qualification says is they are made of learning outcomes. So what the person has learned on what the person can do. Well, this, I say, is an ideal world. First of all, because this is the recognition of diplomas from one country to another is more advanced in the areas where they are regulated professions. So when you need really the title to do something in the labor market, no, in a doctor. So it's clear that you cannot work in a hospital if you are not, if you don't have a diploma as a doctor and as a long education in order to reach that. And this is somehow there are some standards that the different countries have to follow about that. But then there are many professions which the diploma is not exactly the same in one country or another. I mean, a lawyer, for sure, the laws in one country are different from another. So the fact that you are a lawyer in one country doesn't mean that you automatically can work in another. But then if you descend to lower levels, middle and lower levels of qualifications, this is even more diverse. So a plumber is not a plumber everywhere. It is not using the same techniques everywhere. And it does not follow the same learning pathway to become a plumber everywhere. So that's there where the issue of portability is more important. There is people who come to a labor market with a certain level of qualifications in the country of origin, and then this is not recognized by so it's not understood in the labor market where he or she is intended to work, and therefore automatically have to work in professions which are lower in the scale, or have worse working conditions or worse salary, despite the person is qualified to do higher things. So this is the idea of portability, is that you can bring that with you. Then there are mechanisms of recognition of diplomas, but then there's all what is known as validation of skills and competences or previous learning. So the idea is that you can recognize, or you can identify what the person can do by doing a test, or doing an observation in a concrete working situation, or you can generate a simulation of a working condition, and then the person by acting in this situation can show which is the skills and competences that the person has. At the end, a competence is that is what you can mobilize in the act of work. So if you can observe that, you can certify that this is what is happening. Very often, in the result, the outcome of a validation is not a full recognition of the whole qualification, but say, well, of this, you have 70% of what in this country we consider as a qualification, and then therefore with some training or some additional experience, you can really reach the whole qualification needed. Then something that is important is that also in most of the jobs, it is the employer who decides if the person has the skills and and competences that are needed. So really what you need is not only certificates and diplomas. Very often what you need is a description of what the person can do, and then it is up to employer to test if this is really what it is needed for the job. And that's what they normally do in any selection process. So it's more this kind of information that can help the different actors intervening in the labor market to understand what is the skills and competences that someone does. And that's the sense of portability. Then
Thanks.
career guidance can play also an important role there.
Thanks a lot, Xavier. I think what the key word from your intervention, and also something that Anita mentioned, is the importance of involvement of employers in any solution we figure out for the labor migration. And for talent partnerships, I think Anita mentioned that, and of course for career guidance as well. Well, I think we can call it today. I would like to thank our speakers for this very interesting talk. Thanks a million to Xavier Mateo de Cortada, the director ad interim of the European Training Foundation. Thanks a lot, Xavier. And thanks a million to Anita Vella, head of unit Legal Pathways and Integration, Director General for Migration and Home Affairs of the European Commission. Thanks a lot, Anita.
Thanks to you and everyone.
And thanks a lot also to our technical producers, Susan and Dominique, without them, this live streaming would not be possible. Thanks a lot to all followers. Thanks for all your highs and hellos. Thanks for your questions, dear followers. And stay tuned because there is much more to come. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.